We are so grateful for Sara Goldsby's time. She is here today with us to give us her thoughts and insights on confidence. And so Sara Goldsby with DAODAS, she is the director of DAODAS, is with us. And I'm going to turn it over to her. And if you have questions for her, please do put them into the Slido slide, and then I'll read those out and bring those up to her when she's finished with her remarks. So Sara, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I'm excited to be here, and good afternoon, everyone. It was really an honor to be invited to share a little bit of my story with so many amazing women at this event. And I've got to say, I really wish that we were in person together because it's been an extraordinary year to be a little bit disconnected. And I would really love to feel the presence of all of you together in one room and just be surrounded by strong women. So hopefully next year we'll be able to do that, and I'll be lucky enough to be invited. Barbara Rax invited me to coffee, gosh, I think it was about a year and a half ago now. And even though it was my first time meeting her, I shared this story with her. And I've got to say, it surprised me when I told her some of my own, I guess, story of uncertainties and insecurities. I know this presentation is about confidence, but it's certainly about questioning that. And it surprises me now that I've even agreed to share this story with so many of you, so many women that I don't know and have never met. We're on this digital platform. I have always had a hard time being vulnerable, even though I know that it builds connection to others. So I hope that this connects us in some way. This is a true and sort of embarrassing story about how I severely doubted my own qualifications. Imposter syndrome is real. If you've never heard that term, look it up. Everyone experiences it. I've talked about it with both men and women, and it's a really real thing. So it was almost 9 years ago now that I went back to school. And the University of South Carolina categorized me as a non-traditional student, which means I was over the age of 30 entering higher education. And it was after exploring life and different career paths and doing many things in my 20s that I figured out that I really wanted to be a social worker. So on my first day of social work residency, I was working in a big hospital, and I learned that health systems don't work well for people who have more complex social situations. So I decided that day that I also needed a degree in public health, so that I could really work on health services and policy for people and communities that just need a little more focused support. And I gave it my all. And in 3 years, I earned a master's of social work and a master's of public health. And in the spring of 2015, when I graduated from USC, somehow the College of Social Work and the Arnold School of Public Health both gave me top awards and recognition for student achievement, both for my classroom work and the work I was doing in the community. And I also received recognition as Graduate Student of the Year from our National Association of Social Work. And at the time, I was genuinely surprised by these accolades. And I think I even rationalized that if I got one award, maybe it was just easier for the other award givers to follow suit, like they wouldn't have to work as hard to find someone to give these awards to. At any rate, while I was in school, I'd been working with a health organization in North Columbia, or Eau Claire, where I was living at the time, and I was connecting with underserved families. And in 2014, I landed an internship with the South Carolina Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services, known as DAODAS. And it's okay if you've never heard of this state agency. We're smaller than DHEC or DSS. Anyhow, the director of DAODAS at the time needed help coordinating the governor's Prescription Drug Abuse Prevention Council. And the internship felt really right for me because my entire family, through multiple generations, has been pretty seriously impacted by addiction. And it was actually during that internship in November of 2014, when I was walking out of my office to go home for the day, I got a call from my dad that I'll never forget. He wanted to let me know that my mom probably wouldn't make it through the night. She was hospitalized way out west in Wyoming where they lived. And she'd been up and down over the years, but At that time, she had been in a coma for around 3 weeks with severe sepsis and cirrhosis of the liver, which was directly related to decades of her alcohol use disorder. And she had never gotten treatment for that. So it was a pretty precise moment in my life when I felt simultaneously the irony of being there and gratitude to be at an agency, really just be in an office with people who are working so hard to help people like my mom. And I guess sometimes, we're just where we're supposed to be. And I think I was where I was supposed to be right then. So when I graduated, I applied to stay on full time at the department. And I was lucky enough to get to keep working on special projects for the director. I got to build out medical addiction services around our state and work on policy that we'd never had before in order to address the opioid crisis and a number of other things. And in 2016, the director of the agency announced that he intended to retire soon. And this would be his second retirement because he had in fact come out of retirement to take the position he was currently in. So it was around that time that I got another phone call that was almost beyond belief. Again, it was the end of the day and I was leaving the office when an assistant to Governor Haley called and asked me if I would please apply for the agency head's position to be a candidate to take the place of the retiring director. Now, I don't remember what I actually said on this phone call, but I definitely remember laughing a lot, like probably inappropriately laughing, because I was so surprised and thought that this notion that I could apply for or even be considered for this job, I just thought this notion was absurd. It was just an idea that had never crossed my mind. So what's worse is that in the weeks that followed, many of my colleagues, knowing about the forthcoming retirement, they called me, or when I saw them at a meeting, they would pull me aside and ask if I was going to be the successor for the position. And I really thought that people were just being sweet and thoughtful and, making nice conversation about my boss retiring. I honestly, it still didn't occur to me that everyone was seeing that I was the best person to lead the agency. And here's how blind I was. This is the embarrassing part. On a policy trip to Washington, D.C. around that time, I actually pulled aside a slightly older male colleague and a friend of mine from another state agency. We were in the hotel lobby where the meetings were being held, and I asked him to come sit with me on that giant stuffy lobby furniture, kind of away from everyone. And I pitched the idea that he should apply for the position. And I told him that he would be a great director and that I would love to work for him. And he just shook his head and said, "Sara, there is no one better than you to take this role, and everyone's expecting you to be the next director." So anyway, I can't say specifically why I wasn't seeing what everyone else saw. Maybe it's because I was so used to seeing white-haired men in top leadership positions, so I couldn't envision myself there. But I had intentionally earned 2 advanced degrees specific to organizational leadership, management, and policy for health services. I'd shadowed the agency director, earned several awards for leadership, and was actually ready to do the job. And I've been the director at the agency in that position for 4.5 years now. And I love it every single day. And we are accomplishing so much for the state of South Carolina. So I'll share one more anecdote with this story. When I took the position, I was 35 years old, about to get married for the first time. And while I didn't have deep conversations about it with my fiance, internally, I really thought that I probably couldn't be an agency head and become a mother for the first time simultaneously. And at 35, I was seeing that window of opportunity to start a family. It would be closing in the coming years. So knowing that this public service job was a top priority, I think inside of myself, I let go or sort of resigned the idea of becoming a mother anytime soon. But a few years into it, with that window closing, I reassessed the situation and realized that the idea that I could only do one or the other was silly. And I had my baby girl, Sophie, this past August. And I'm still working hard and being a mom now, and it works. It's all possible. I think that because women haven't been in leadership positions as much as men have, we simply haven't absorbed it as normal and expected. So we can have a hard time in envisioning ourselves in those leadership positions as women, of any age, and with our other roles and responsibilities related to family. So I hope that this makes a connection to some of you today, and that you truly consider stepping up to take a role, even if you're hesitant inside. Say yes, jump in there. I think we need more women visible in leadership as models for the little girls who will one day fill our shoes. So that's my story. I thank you for the time today, and I'm happy, Sarah, to answer questions.
Yeah, and thank you so much, because I think that you obviously have a lot of humility, and I think that it's probably very difficult for, I mean, even still, for you to like talk about the fact that you recognize now that you're qualified, that you were the one that should have had the job because of your humility. It's probably still sort of, so thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for being willing to share that. And I think that what you said about, only seeing white-haired men in the job, um, is something that we've heard a few times today already. We heard it from our keynote this morning about why it's important to have gender and diversity representation. As if you don't see it, you don't know that you can be it. But so I think that, you sharing that story is helping other people. You're lifting other people up along the way, which is so important, and we really appreciate it. I know that we were really hoping that you would say yes when Barbara asked you to do this, and I know that you had to think about it a little bit. So thank you for thinking about it, and thank you for doing it. So yeah, we have a few questions that I would love to share. So one of them is, how did you decide that you could balance personal and professional? We heard it from our speaker this morning, and I think that all of us feel it. And particularly, the age that I am, it was like everyone sort of told you that you can have everything when you were a little girl. Like, we're old enough that we didn't face all of the barriers that some people who came before us have. And then when you get in, you think you can have everything, and then when it actually comes time to do it, you're like, how can I possibly have everything? How can I do all of this and do all of it well? So I'll stop talking and let you answer the question about just, how did you get there? Or did you just have to do it to realize that it could be done?
Yeah, it's sort of like jumping off the diving board. But honestly, I did take a little bit of time to think hard about the women that I knew around me who were also doing it. There are lots of moms balancing, big professional roles and families. And so I did take some time to think about them and think about, how I saw them in the professional space, and how I knew, about what some of the things that they were managing at home. And so I did just kind of jump into it, knowing that others had walked the path before me. And it's funny because after, when I was pregnant, and then after I had Sophie, so many women reached out to me, folks that I sort of only kind of knew, or might have been acquaintances in the professional world. They reached out in a real way, by phone or email, to just say, like, you've got this, and ask for help. And, don't be ashamed to ask for help. Whether that's hiring somebody to mow the lawn, or, just getting family involved. And I took that to heart. And I'm reminding myself it's okay to ask for help. And I continue to ask for help, but it's doable. We make things work. So it was a little bit about thinking of who I knew around me, and taking that advice and that support from the women who offered it.
So this question tag teams on that, and it's about setting boundaries. Like, how do you set boundaries and say no to some things and yes to others, and not feel incompetent or guilty about what you're choosing to do versus what you're choosing not to do? And I think that goes for mowing the yard, or when people ask for your time on boards, or when people ask for your time to share your remarks on confidence for a brown bag lunch at a conference.
Yeah, when it comes to being a mom, I'm only 6, almost 7 months in. And so it's been, I'm probably still experiencing some of that mom guilt. I think a lot more is to come. I take my role as a public service professional very seriously, but being a mom is also a very serious role. And so, um, it's about time management, certainly. We've been very lucky in the last, Sophie, my daughter and I have been very lucky in the last year that during COVID, we've been able to be together and do this. So I'll be honest, like there's been a lot of this action in meetings where she's breastfeeding right down here.
It's like that commercial where it's like a coffee commercial where the man's in his underwear, right? Like as long as the camera's in the right spot.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't I don't know that I'm far enough in yet to give good advice on how to manage the guilt. I mean, it's real. And I think just knowing that you're prioritizing what you can in the moment to do the best in the moment and just taking it day by day. I've said over and over again over the last several months, sometimes it's 1 hour at a time, sometimes it's one day at a time, definitely 1 week at a time, and how we balance things.
Sure. And even before you were a mom, I'm sure that, once you started to be in a more visible and prominent role, that there are lots of asks for board service and, those kinds of things. So, I mean, even speaking to that a little, how do you make decisions about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do? I mean, even if you're not a mom, there are only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, and I'm just a yes person, so I always say yes unless I absolutely can't say yes. I think a lot of us are like that, we just make ourselves available. And so, I don't know how that's balanced other than, my primary goal is to serve the citizens of South Carolina who, may face addictions issues. And I don't know if I have found balance, to be really honest. I really just say yes, and I probably say yes way too much to strike a balance.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing that. And one of the other questions, we would love to please, use the Slido. We would love to hear other things that you have to say. I wanted to tell you, you can't, you're not looking at the screen, but it says, trust me, the being the mother window closes when you choose it to close. I'm 42 and I just had a baby in November. My leadership roles have started later in life. So lots of kudos from other women out there who are doing it. And I think people who have put their careers on hold thinking the same things that you thought, that I can't do both, and so I have to wait. But we're very fortunate that medical technology is as it is, and that we can still safely and happily do that. So very exciting. So another question, everyone sees you as an inspiration, and we're getting a lot of that. And one of the questions, and I'm not really sure how I'm not sure how I would answer this. How can we take your story with us as inspiration? So I guess maybe what are you hoping that people will take away from what, you opening yourself up and being vulnerable in this way?
Yeah. I guess I would just say everybody faces, imposter syndrome or questions at some point, whether they're the right fit to step into leadership. And I guess I just see men saying yes a lot more or not, um, I guess, I guess I just don't see them hesitating the way that I had hesitated. And so I think it's just about saying yes and jumping in and doing it and going for it. And really, having those folks around you to support you and back you up, you know, um, lean on women, lean on the women that you see in leadership, lean on the women, around you. Um, Ask a woman to coffee. Barbara Rax just asked me to go out to coffee. I didn't know who she was or what she did. And we've made an amazing connection that links us to so many other women. And I think that building that support network, and leveraging that support network of women to just take the leap and jump into, these leadership positions is what it's going to take.
Yeah,
So
and you mentioned when you were telling your story, that you had been following closely, some of your supervisor, your boss, and we hear a lot about mentors and sponsors, and so that sounds like maybe it was happening maybe in a less formal way with you. But what are your thoughts on? And so we talked this morning, and there were some questions about kind of what's the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, and the idea that a mentor is someone that you ask to help you. A sponsor is someone who is helping you telling you the things that maybe you don't want to hear, but also advocating for you and like speaking up for you when you're not around also. So do you have some examples, or do you feel like, even informally, that kind of happened for you, that brought you along?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, certainly the mentorship for sure, because, folks can sometimes naturally take you under their wing. And sometimes you got to say, hey, can I get up under that wing? Like, and I genuinely have tried to collect as many mentors as possible in a real way. I've been pretty bold about saying, can you mentor me on this or that? I don't think that there's any harm in asking, and people are often really flattered when they're asked to be a mentor. Everybody wants to cultivate growth. And so I don't think that there should be any hesitation from anybody to find a wing that they want to tuck under and ask if they can get under that wing.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to check the chat and make sure we don't have any other questions. We're just getting like all kinds of kudos for you. It's been such a pleasure to have you with us today. And I think it's been really exciting to have, and we've had a couple of speakers who have really achieved amazing things and have this incredible level of humility still. It's still very real. So we appreciate that. And we appreciate, I don't think that there are many men that would come on and share, the kind of story that you shared, even if they had been through it. I don't think that they would ever be able to admit that was what their line of thinking had been. And it's really to our advantage. So thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and just a lot of positive energy to all the women here today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a great day.